Class 9, welcome to your geography class. In today's class, I'm going to finish your chapter number 9, Weathering and Denudation, which we had started before winter break. So let's start with the topic Work of River. A river is a body of flowing water, and the place from where river originates is known as its source, and where it ends is known as its mouth. Right? So the place from where a river originates is called its source, and where it ends, that point is known as its mouth. Right? Okay. Now the course of the river can be divided into three parts: the upper course, the middle course, and the lower course. The shape of the river valley changes as the river flows through these three courses. So now the shape of the river valleys that changes as the river flows from these three courses, that is the upper, middle, and the lower course. The speed of the why, and now what is the reason for changing that shape of the valley? Because the speed of the flow of river also changes, because in the upper course the speed is very high, in the middle course the speed is intermediate, and in the lower course the speed will be less, right? So the speed of the flow of river also changes, as does the work of the river as an agent of gradation. So now let's start with the upper course. Upper course, in this region, the river usually flows through mountainous region. Through mountainous region means through height, we can say altitude, high altitude. The volume of water is not much, right? But the gradient being steep, the water flows swiftly in a high speed, which means it erodes and transports maximum soil or maximum sediments, we can say, right? Because of the gradient being steep, the water flows swiftly, right? So it erodes and transports the maximum soils or sediments in this upper course. So the river in this course develops typical landforms, and those landforms are your gorge, that is I-shaped valley, and V-shaped valley, and as well as you'll also get waterfall and rapids, cataract. So these are the features which are developed, or we can say the typical landforms which are developed during the upper course of the river. So gorge or I-shaped valley, when a river flows through a mountainous region at the from the high altitude, made up of hard rock with little rainfall, most of the energy of the river is spent in down cutting action, resulting in narrow valley, which is known as I-shaped valley. So the Indus River and many tributaries of Ganga flow through many steep gorges. A gorge of magnified size is known as canyon. For example, Great Canyon of River Colorado in USA. So you can see the feature of this Great Canyon, which is because of this is the typical landform, I-shaped valley, we can say. So this gorge, this Great Canyon, is the developed due to the upper course of the river. Now V-shaped valley. V-shaped valleys are found in the upper course of river and are result of erosion by the river and weathering. V-shaped valleys are deep river valleys with steep sides that look like V. That is why it is known as V-shaped valleys. In the upper course, river has the greatest gravitational potential energy, and so the greatest potential to erode vertically. Not much lateral erosional take place, so the channel and the valley remains relatively narrow. So narrow means not very broad, not very wide, right? As the channel and valley the sides of the valley are exposed and become susceptible to weathering. The valley's sides also undergo mass movements, resulting in large volumes of material falling into the river channel, adding to its erosive power and causing the valley sides to take up a V shape. So the reason for the V shape is as the valley deepens, the side of the valley are exposed, and exposed means they are much prone to weathering, right? So the sides also undergoes mass movement. Mass movement means it's a uh, flow of soil, right? So resulting in a large volume of material falling into the river channel and adding to its erosive power and causing the shape of the valley and the valley sides to take up a V shape, right? Now next is waterfall. A waterfall is a steep descent of river over a rocky ledge. When the river water falls down almost vertically from a sufficient height along the course of the river, it forms a waterfall. Okay, now just see the picture showing waterfall there. So when a river flows from hard rock to soft rock, the softer rock is easily eroded, forming a ledge over which the river falls, right? So this is showing waterfalls. So the water is flowing from the hard rock to the soft rock, forming a river fall. As the water falls over the ledge, it creates a depression known as a plunge pool. So plunge pool is a waterfall only, right? It makes a plunge pool. Depression, ditch. Okay, now next is rapids. Next is the rapids. So rapids are the area of broken, fast-flowing water in a stream or a river that has a slight gradient, right? Gradient means slope. The water tumbles over or around rocks and boulders. As it flows swiftly through a narrow part of the river, a series of rapids, big and small, are called cascades. So you can see the slightly gradient is here. Slight gradient. Slight gradient means it's a slopey here, right? So it flows very swiftly through that gradient along with the rocks and boulders, right? So a series of rapids, big or small, are also known as cascades. So that cascades are also formed. Now next is cataract. So cataracts are the term cataract is used for a series of rapids in a large rivers, right? So if you find this rapids in a series of rapids, we called it cataract. So it is often applied to waterfalls of large volume. The major work of the river as an agent of gradation is to erode. Erode means to move a large materials or the sediments from one place to another. So that is a erode. So transportation also takes place in this course. Now next is middle course. That is in the middle course, the river enters the plain as the gradient decreases, slope decreases, right? So the flow of river slows down because the gradient decreases, height is not there, slope is not there, so the flow of the river or the speed of the river slows down. So does its energy also. Volume of water increases considerably. As the slope of the course flattens, that means when it enters in the middle course, that means in the plain area, the river cuts less into the river bed. So instead it widens its bank and its river bed, giving rise to U-shaped valley. Now the volume increases but the speed decreases. There is no slope and river cuts are also not there, so it gives rise to U-shaped valley. So the main work of the river here is transport sediments, not to cut down or erode, but to transport sediments, and deposition also takes place in the middle course. Now here transportation is given. Rivers carry weathered and eroded rock materials along them. Some of these materials also have tools and help in erosion activity. So the amount of eroded material carried by a river is called its load. Underline, the amount of eroded material carried by river is known as load. River carries clay and silt in dissolved form, and material like clay and silt also carried away suspended load. So coarse and heavy materials like sand and pebbles roll, bounce, and are dragged along the river bed. They are carried by the river as bed load. Right? So this is the transportation which takes place in the middle course of the river. Now the river in the middle course develops some typical landforms. Now these landforms are Alluvial Fan, Alluvial Plain, Meander. These are some of the typical landforms. Now let's see what is Alluvial Fan. Alluvial Fan is a triangle shaped deposits of gravel, sand and smaller pieces of sediment such as silt. So alluvial fans are created as flowing water interacts with mountains, hills, etc. The rushing water carries alluvium, that means sediments, to a flat plain where the stream leaves its channel to spread out. So that's the alluvial fan. So alluvial fan is a deposition of these sediments or deposition of alluvium on the flat plain, and it's a triangular shaped deposits of alluvium or deposits of sediments. So alluvium is deposited as the stream fan out, creating the familiar triangular shaped feature. That is why it is known as alluvial fan. River Kosi has built up an alluvial fan more than 15,000 square kilometer. Now just see the picture of alluvial fan. This is the triangular shaped deposits made by the river, made by the middle course of the river. So it's a typical feature of middle course of the river, alluvial fan, flood plain. Now, alluvial plain is a large flat landform that is created from the deposition of sediments or debris over a long period by rivers from the highlands. So, sediments are brought about by weathering and erosion, then water and wind transport the debris along. Once the deposited sediments increase, they form alluvial soil. The process of transporting the sediment by water is called fluvial process. Which process? Fluvial process. Sediments are formed when there are floods which carry debris, that means sediments, along the way. When the waters of the river subside, the sediments are deposited, and with the time an alluvial plain emerges. The Mississippi alluvial plains, which were created by the Mississippi River Indo-Gangetic plain across India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and your Po Valley in Italy and Oxnard Plain in California, are some of the examples of alluvial plain. And these plains are formed when there are the floods which carry the debris or the sediments along the way of the river, and when the waters of the river subside. So subside means when it is side means go down or become weaker, then the sediments are deposited there, and with time an alluvial plain emerges out. So this is how the alluvial plain form. Now next is meander. So meander is formed due to both deposition and erosion. So in the middle course, the river has more energy and high volume of water with gentle gradient, gentle slope, right? So the alternating bars of sediments force water to weave around them. The swing of river water results in erosion by undercutting on one side and deposition on the other side to form of meander. So we know that in the middle course, the speed of the river becomes lesser, right? So, and the volume of the water will increase with the gentle gradient, right? So in this course, there is a swing of river water results in erosion by undercutting on one side, but on the another side, deposition on the another side, leading to the formation of meander. Okay, let's have a look of this picture, meander. So meander, in this middle course, the meander is formed in which there is cutting off one side of the river and another side there is a deposition of sediments. So this forms meander, right? So now next feature is Oxbow Lake. So an Oxbow Lake is, just see the picture of Oxbow Lake. So this lake is produced when a meander forms almost a complete circle, right? When this meander makes a complete circle, then we called it with a narrow neck. We called it Oxbow Lake. Sometimes this narrow neck is cut by the river as it flows straight. So the water flows the shorter route, leaving the broader meander loop abundant. So this meander loop filled with water converted into lake, that is known as Oxbow Lake. So this is filled with water, and this filled water converted into a lake, we called it Oxbow Lake. So the shape of the this lake is shape of the Oxbow Lake is almost, it's a complete circle with a narrow neck. So this is Oxbow Lake, right? Now come to the next feature, that is Braided River. So when a river carries an enormous, means a large amount of load means sediments. So it is unable to carry it all the way to its mouth, to its end, right? So this causes the river to divide into many networks of channels, forming islands in the river channel. Such a river is known as Braided River. You can see the picture of Braided River. So this river is unable, because of its large amount of load, large amount of sediments, it is unable to carry its large load, and it is so there is a the river this causes the river to divide into many channels, right? Many channels, forming Braided River. So this is Braided River. So the river is useful, this Braided River is useful in this stage. It is used for navigations and transportation, this type of river, Braided River. It supplies water for irrigation, right? Now next is the lower stage. In the lower stage, this is the stage, the river flows considerably very slowly, and because of the gradient is almost negligible, right? So slope is not there, is almost zero slope gradient. So the river also flows sluggishly due to the heavy load it is carrying. So the main work of the river here is that only deposition. So the river in the course develops typical forms, landforms, that is delta, distributary. The typical features are delta, distributary, and estuary. So we all know that the delta is what? It's a triangular shaped piece of land that develops at the mouth, at the end of the river by deposition of sediments. So this delta was first described. The delta of the this name was first used to describe the delta of Nile. So the river has less energy to cut into the land, and it can no longer carry the heavy load of sediment. And when the sediment is deposited in the river channel, when the river meets the sea, a new landform is formed there. So that is known as delta. So the best example is Ganga Brahmaputra delta. which is the largest delta. Sundarban Delta is also the another name for Ganga Brahmaputra Delta is Sundarban Delta. So that delta, Ganga Brahmaputra Delta or Sundarban Delta, is one of the largest deltas of the world. Now distributary, what is distributary? When sediments build up along the river's main channel. So when there is a deposition of sediments, right, debris there, then it build up along the river's main channel. The channel gets blocked and the river is forced to divide into branches. That is known as distributaries. Now next is estuary. So that is, many rivers do not form deltas, especially along the rocky coast, right? So most of the rivers, they do not form deltas. So instead, they have a narrow, gradually widening bay at the mouth, cutting deep inland. Such a funnel-shaped opening at the mouth of a river is known as an estuary. So what is the only difference between the delta and estuary is that delta, let's talk about the similarity. Delta and estuary, both they are formed at the mouth of the river. Right now, what is the only difference is delta is a triangular shaped piece of land that develops at the mouth that develops at the mouth of river by the deposition of sediments brought down by the rivers. Now estuary is what? They do not like the many rivers, they do not form deltas. So it's a funnel shaped opening at the mouth of the river, right? A widening bay, we can say it have a narrow widening bay and it's a funnel shaped depositions at the or the funnel shaped land at the mouth of the river is known as estuary, right? So that is the only difference. So children, we have completed this chapter here, and now your work is to read out the chapter thoroughly and just do the work which is given in assignment number 28. Thank you.